So good morning again. My name is David King, and I'm going to be your guide this morning, taking you through the content. And as always, as T's and C's, I am not a guru. I'm not an expert. I am someone that is fascinated, interested, and willing to learn more about the subject matter. I always am wary of those that say they are gurus and experts in a particular field, because that defeats the whole purpose of unlearning and relearning. It's a never-ending journey. So I encourage you all to be open to embrace something new. And intersectionality is a concept that South Africans aren't very familiar with, which I will take you through. So let me share my slides to start off with. We have 1 hour to tackle this juicy subject matter. We could spend an entire day unpacking this. However, this is going to be an intro, and hopefully it will also be an opportunity for you to ask some questions. So please feel free to use that chat function to put in comments, questions. I always encourage participants to use and abuse that chat function. If we were in person, it would be a lovely we would be engaging with each other, but because unfortunately we are online, which is very convenient, what tends to happen is people hold back from asking questions or commenting. I don't believe you have access to be unmuted. So if you can't unmute, then please pop in your questions, which I will refer to from time to time during the session, and I will make sure there's some time at the end to tackle those. I will be showing a few clips, 1 or 2 clips, and I'm a believer in visuals and in clips. It just enhances the learning experience. Right, here we go. Intersectionality at work, embracing diverse identity. So let's start with what this term intersectionality means. So I'm sure you've all come across an intersection where roads meet, and it's either there's a robot or there is a traffic light, stop streets, or a circle, which only us in KZN, we're the only ones who know how to use a circle. Only joking. But it's where a whole lot of things come together. And I like the statement here: we're not one thing, we're many things. So plant that seed in your head. So when we talk about intersectionality, we are reminding everybody that we are made up of so many different things / identities. Another nice visual, before we go into the definition, is the overlapping of these. So this image indicates something that is overlapped. And once again, society has made us choose between right or wrong, left or right, black or white, but actually it's more complex and messier than that, because we can hold 2 different thoughts at the same time. We can hold different feelings at the same time, and the same applies to identities. So what is intersectionality? So if we had to Google it, or we had to ask ChatGPT, who's very helpful these days, to assist us, we would come up with many different explanations or definitions. So I wanted to really tackle it in this way, that it is a group of various social identities. And here are some examples. We're going to look at some more, but these are just some examples: race, gender, class, sexual orientation. In South Africa, as you will know, and because HRTorQue is a supplier and supporter of for a lot of you in this space is that as South Africans, we focus on three components when it comes to employment equity. It is gender, it is race, and disability. Those are just three of hundreds of identities. And we target those three from a legislation perspective to bring about a more aligned and fair and equitable society. Sadly, what that does, it makes it compliance focused instead of behavior change. And because we focus on those three, we often forget about all the other components. So this session is just to remind us that although we focus from a legislation perspective on three, there are many more, which we are going to touch on today. And all these identities, they overlap and they interact to create a unique experience or unique being, just like me. So there's some components that we will share, and there are some identities that we will not share. And it is linked in this example here, this of a definition, is linked to privilege and discrimination. So sometimes, because of our identity, it benefits us. So everybody is privileged. And that is an important message because sometimes privilege gets a bad rap and some people get very sensitive. But actually, in every way, because of our uniqueness, we have a privilege because of one of our social identities. But on the other hand, it also leads to the polar opposite, which is discrimination. So sometimes because of our identity, like race or gender or class or sexual orientation, we are discriminated against. So as you know, generally globally in society, a white, straight male, that sounds like me, seems to be the most privileged being on this earth. And white, straight males need not get sensitive about that. They actually need to use that privilege to help other people. Okay, so it's often just how we explain instead of taking offense or getting defensive because of who we are. So where did it all begin? Intersectionality. There was a very bright lady called Kimberly Crenshaw. She is an American, and she's a legal researcher, and she coined this phrase in 1989 to try and show that we're not just one thing. So what it does, it recognizes that individuals do not experience oppression or privilege based on one single identity. Okay, we can suffer or benefit because of more than one. So it just highlights the complexities of social interaction, of social inequalities. So isn't knowledge power? Isn't that a wonderful thing? To just become more knowledgeable and more aware of a subject matter. So I'm going to show you a clip, and then I'm going to show you a visual representation of what I've said, because we're all different. We all engage differently with content. And I don't want this to be death by PowerPoint. So that's why I've included a video. And then once you watch the video, I'm going to show you a visual depiction of what I've actually just spoken about, which might make more sense. If you've got any questions, remember, please start popping them into the question and answer. So I'm going to turn my camera off so I don't distract you when you watch this video.
You know that little voice in your head? The one that tells you to ignore a tasteless joke.
The one that tells you to keep quiet when a client makes a racist comment.
The little voice that tells you you're not smart enough because English isn't your first language.
Or that it's okay to judge someone for leaving early because they have family commitments.
The one that tells you not to say anything when others are being reduced to stereotypes.
Or that it's not a big deal when everyone's opinion isn't considered.
You may think you're the only one that hears that voice, but that voice also speaks to other people. It says,
You're different.
You're an outsider.
You lack commitment.
Your opinion doesn't matter.
instead of listening to that little voice, you need to find yours and make it heard. It's time for all of us to speak up. Because when we change the dialogue, we can change our world.
So, I just wanted to start off with that, just to acknowledge, having watched that, even though it was American, I doubt that any of you have not experienced, in some format, what was shared there, depending on your identity. So there were some good, juicy examples there that can occur in every environment, whether it's in your family, social, workspace. And I like the message about speaking up, and the statement of we have a voice, so use it. That's what our voices are for, and that's what privilege is. In very simple terms, when we have privilege in something, we need to use it for good. And that often means to be able to assist someone that does not have a voice, in that space. So, as I said, let me show you some visual depiction of what I've spoken about. So this image here and the next one is to show just some examples of how we have different combinations of identities. And South Africa being a multicultural society, we are aware of this. When it comes to diversity, we've got it good because we have diversity. Where we as South Africans and where the globe as a whole battles or fails at is the inclusion part. So we know we've got diversity, and often organizations will say, look at us, we are very diverse, and that we meet the employment equity requirements. But that's very different to inclusion, which means to be made part of. So what am I doing that is making people feel that they belong or part of what we do? Because as we know, from a historical structure in most organizations, it's designed for a certain type of person. And now we're expecting people to fit into that space. So let's just look at some of these. So personality, your culture, your age, your nationality, your hobbies, your physical health, your marital status, where you live, the job that you do, your sexual orientation, your political affiliation. We've just had an election. Your abilities, your mental health, and your appearance. So these are just some examples to show you, to open your mindset, to realize, well, I can't just take one or two or three components into account when I'm engaging with fellow employees. If I am overseeing a team, if I am, and it's not interesting thing. Often we get HR, human resource management people, believe and are told it's their responsibility. No, it's everybody's responsibility at the end of the day. So if we look at this image around diversity and diversity dimensions or our different identities, how this helps is that we've got to look at each person and the different dimensions. So in this case, we talk about internal, and I'm not going to go into much detail here because I can't and we don't have time. But we've got internal dimensions, which are things we can't really change. We arrived on this earth, and there's very little we can do about most of them. Our age, our gender, sexual orientation, our physical ability, our ethnicity, and our race. Then we've got external dimensions and organizational dimensions, which often we don't use these to apply decisions. We often make all our decisions around those internal dimensions. Okay, but then you start moving out and you start realizing how many more there actually are that we need to think about and take into account when we're dealing with other human beings. And it's often when we don't take into account these others. Let me give you an example from religion perspective. Because South Africa is deemed to be a Christian, predominantly Christian society, what we tended to do in the past, that everything revolved around Christianity, even in the work environment. And what we tended to do in the past is only celebrate Christian holidays. What we're hopefully seeing more and more, and it's a good question to take that into account for you as decision makers in your environment, is are we all inclusive? Are we taking into account other religions, which there are plenty in our South African context? And it's about just bringing about awareness. That is what inclusion is about. Okay, because all we're saying is that even though the majority in South Africa claim to be Christian, according to the census, where probably half of them are not even practicing Christians, there are many other religions. And in most cases, you all work with people. And on this call, you are not all Christians. So we need to take that into account when we are thinking about events at work, when we are thinking about sensitivities and the language and the things we say and the communication that we put out. And that's just one. Okay, so I wanted to use religion as an example. Pop your questions in. Can't wait to see what's going to be coming up. I'm going to come back to this clip. What I want to do now is look at why. Why is it important? Because someone might say, well, is it really relevant? Is it just a nice to have in our environment? Well, fortunately, we've got science and research to back up the power of a diverse organization with diverse people, and that we promote intersectionality in our environment. So it really, in simple terms, you need to embrace it, because embracing intersectionality allows for or fosters inclusivity and better decision making. But how? But why? So there have been numerous studies, and if you're really adamant, I am willing to send those to you if you need some, because you often need evidence if you're having to go and drive this in your environment. And most excos boards want to see some form of evidence. Well, thank goodness. In this day and age, we have the research and we have the evidence. So one of the most impressive outcomes of a team that you are open to that is open for you to encouraging a team that's diverse and has different identities is their performance. So it actually makes business sense to have a diverse team. Nobody said it's easy. Okay, that's an important point. No one said it's easy to have a diverse team. Why? Because you're different. You see the world differently. You have different questions. You have different viewpoints. However, look at the graph here. The storming. You might have most of you might have come across this if you're in the HR space. Forming, storming, norming, performing. Those are the stages that every group goes through, or every team goes through. That initially, as you will see, it's problematic, okay? But ultimately, because in the storming, forming stage, you're having to get to know each other. And we're still having to understand culture and identity and orientation and thought patterns. But look at that. Ultimately, what happens? A diverse team outweighs a homogeneous team, which is a team that people are all the same. It's all white males, for example. However, this only happens if you've got a leader that leads effectively. Okay, so that's also been some really interesting research lately, the power of an effective leader versus an ineffective leader. So the benefits are diverse perspectives. How's that? So we just see the world differently. We got different perspective of people's thoughts and ideas and what goes on in society. It actually creates improved innovation and creativity. And what does that link to? Problem solving. And it then creates a more equitable society. Because then what? Because we know each other, because we work together, because we understand each other, guess what happens? Yes, we are more open to being inclusive as a collective. Right, so that hopefully makes sense. And as I said, this is not, I haven't just produced this and sucked it from my thumb and pulled it from the ether. This is research based, and as I said, I can if you wish, I can supply all the research material as to the benefits of embracing a more diverse group of people. Very importantly, as I said, no one said it's easy. There are major challenges to intersectionality and creating a more inclusive society. So we mustn't go in blind. And as South Africans, you should know that already. Because we are very much, believe it or not, a society that works together and now lives together. Since when we dumped apartheid, we go to school together. We now even marry each other from different diverse backgrounds. So from that way, it's becoming a more diverse society. However, we need to be self-aware. And I have done previous webinars on EQ and self-awareness and leading self. So without a doubt, it starts there, because you can't go around fixing other people if you haven't fixed yourself. So there's this inner work that we need to, that we have to engage with and have to deal with. And here's 3 challenges. Okay. First one is called double bias. Okay. So in other words, you've got more than one identity that is leading to you being diminished in some way, or that you're seen in a different light, or you're at a disadvantage, or that you're not the majority. Woman of color. So you're a woman, first of all, sorry for you, and you're a woman of color. So you've got a double whammy. LGBTQ individuals, disabled individuals are other examples of where you've got more than one identity that may lead to you being discriminated against. So this is, once again, awareness and acknowledgement. Microaggressions, if you haven't heard that term before, you need to sort that one out, because we're all guilty of microaggressions. I'm going to show you some examples shortly. These are subtle but harmful behaviors that dismiss one of these identities. And it often comes from the majority. So whoever's in the majority, we feel, why must we cater for the minority? And we make microaggressions. Okay. Those of you who are in a minority of any kind or any disadvantaged group will know exactly what I'm talking about. Okay. However, we all, in a sense, have had microaggressions against us. Remember, because we are a complex multitude of different identities. And then I'm going to look at some examples shortly. Then the third challenge is lack of representation. This is where there's underrepresentation. That's probably one of our biggest challenges, because if you're a minority, we tend to cater for the majority, because that's how society works, doesn't it? And that's exactly why there are such wonderful benefits to driving diversity and inclusion in your environment, because you are saying is that everybody has a voice. And if we want to be inclusive, we need to rethink how we get everybody involved. Because if we're still continuing with our same old, let me give you an example. Your organization from historic times was to go and watch rugby at the stadium and to drink alcohol. Hey, and that was the founding fathers' thing. And so if ever there was a time to celebrate or recognize people, we went to a box at the rugby stadium and alcohol supplied. Now, the challenge with that is no one's saying you can't do that. The challenge is that what about people that don't like rugby and that don't drink alcohol? So in the past, you would have been seen as, you don't really fit in if you don't want to come to the rugby and watch the rugby and drink alcohol with us. Or you might be deemed as a person that you exclude yourself. So we'll say to you, you didn't come to the rugby and you don't drink alcohol, you're excluding yourself. And if you don't play golf, then it's not going to work for you. That is what I'm talking about. Okay. Though that way of thinking is gone, yet it's still there. I see it in many organizations. And there's the personal journey that you've got to go and challenge yourself on. Are we still doing stuff, churning out stuff that's excluding other people? Okay, so it's finding new ways in which to be inclusive. So let's look at some examples here. Whoa, we could spend all day here too. So let's look at some racial microaggressions. So those of you who are not white in South Africa will have probably heard a lot of these. Particularly my favorite one is you speak English so well. Your name is so hard to pronounce. Can I call you Z? Your name's Zanele. I just call you Z because I can't pronounce your name. Those are very common, and there's often from a religious perspective where you might be told, if you're not a Christian, what are the funny holidays that you have, or why are you wearing that funny thing around your wrist or your neck? What's that about again? What do you people do? These are all examples of microaggressions. You also saw a couple in the video that we watched. Okay, not pronouncing or spelling an individual's name correctly, interrupting individuals when they're speaking, dismissing individual's opinion, gaslighting, telling someone that they're too sensitive, or they need to just be tougher in this environment. Continue arranging team social events based around alcohol, making assumptions about seniority or where somebody comes from, especially from a culture perspective or a race perspective, trying to say, where do you originate from? Where are your family from? Where are you from? And seeing them as not part of. So those are some examples. And as I said, it can be related to any one of those identities. Yeah, I've used probably females, title, roles, race here, culture, gender, religion. Those are common, okay? So those of you, some of you may be Jewish or Muslim, may be getting flack around what's going on in the Middle East, and that you must take sides. And you get painted with the same brush because of your religion and your culture. And both, what's fascinating about being a Jew or Muslim, it is both a culture not both. It's three things. It's a culture, it's a people, and it's a religion. So look at that. Even within that, there are a whole lot of dimensions. So without fearing this or being overwhelmed by it, it's just about asking questions. If you don't understand, ask. If you stuff up, because you will, we talk about diversity and inclusion, you're always going to stuff up. And that's often what holds people back. They don't want to say anything in case they say it the wrong way. Think about pronouns. So they'd rather not say anything. Instead saying, I don't know what to call you. Or please explain to me why you're they. Please explain instead of shutting down, condemning, avoiding, ignoring somebody because of their pronouns. And this is what I'm really encouraging you to do. Be open-minded. Be open to unlearn and to relearn and to perhaps get something, learn something new.
David, you
So
have a question under the
yes.
question and answer tab.
Yes, please fire
It's
away.
where does neurodiversity fit in, and how can business accommodate it?
Same. Absolutely great. And I was getting to neurodiversity. Same applies. So we're also pretty slow, South Africans, to tackle neurodiversity and the impact that it has, because statistically, even in this webinar, we've got neurodiverse individuals, and there's a range of neurodiversity. And the key in a working environment is to get people comfortable enough to, like disability, to be able to share that they're neurodiverse, so that you can take into account. So the challenge always is if you don't know, you can't do anything about it. And why are people not telling you? Because they're going to feel discriminated against in some way. And that's why we battle in South Africa and globally to get people to identify if they have any form of disability. Okay. And it's there not to, remember, we've got it so stuck in our brains as legislation. It should be there to how can we support and enhance somebody in the working environment. And that's the same as neurodiversity. And those of you who fall into that category will understand that you've had to either adapt, or you've had to work even harder to do what you have to do. And a all-inclusive employer is going to see the benefits of neurodiversity rather than seeing it as problematic. Okay? And that's often why people hold back. So, but there's some amazing research, there's some amazing support and ideas around tackling neurodiversity, but we mustn't see it as something separate too. It is a identity, like the list of all the other identities we've seen. So we need to take that into account when we are also driving an initiative, getting feedback, planning an event. So it's not what I want to do. It's how do I make everybody open to doing what we need to do. So we're going to look at some tips and suggestions shortly. I just wanted to show you, just want to see if I want to show you this now. I want to show you this at the end. Okay, I want to show you this. Oops, I'm going back.
There are people out there that would consider me, quote unquote, I hate this word, but a terrorist.
As an Indigenous person, you were known as somebody who potentially could be a drunk, have substance abuse issues.
Being Indian, they may have expected me to know a lot about computers.
It's sometimes a really unique experience navigating the world as a person with a disability who looks to be completely able-bodied.
he made a comment about, well, don't worry about this that's going on because you won't be here too much longer. You'll be off having your next baby soon.
Most women are, told they need to behave a certain way.
People really think that my generation is lazy.
Just another blonde waitress.
Hey, do you rap?
The only black girl.
I didn't belong.
I guess kind of growing up, people made these assumptions about what I was supposed to be, but it was really eye-opening for me to realize that I had been making those same assumptions myself.
We all like to think that we're inclusive, but sometimes we don't actually step back and think, wait a second, did I hear everybody in the room?
I mean, don't judge is the message, but it's also hard not to.
I always thought that every gay man was flamboyant and rude.
The older generation is set in their ways.
Initially, I thought there was something weird about a girl who would want to be a camera operator because of the word cameraman, and we still have to work past these things and stuff.
I went into the school on my first day, and there's these little girls, and they're wearing hijabs, and I was really intimidated by that.
Have your initial judgments, but also be willing to learn.
My definition of inclusion is a world and a society in which constructed barriers have been torn down.
Inclusion for me is setting up an environment where everybody is comfortable.
Open to accept other people's opinions.
All individuals, regardless of their diversity, feel welcomed, feel respected.
It means that they don't have to try to be what others expect them to be.
Change is possible, but it takes the right person to make a change happen.
I had a shop floor supervisor who stood up for me and sent out a company-wide email saying that Robin has every legal right to use the women's change rooms. It's funny because you do find allies in some of the strangest places.
One thing we can do to support inclusion is to talk about it.
You have to demonstrate that you're committed to this.
Get to know people around you. Do something different. Learn something different. Learn about a culture.
Different races, different religions, different belief systems, and see what there's good in all those things.
Be an active listener. That's one of the things I practice with other immigrants as well.
Open up your mind and take your time and get to know someone instead of putting them in this box. Because showing that interest, it's gonna surprise you.
Ask me a stupid question. I don't care if it's a stupid question, just ask me.
I'm an open book and willing to answer them.
I don't see it as a negative thing. I see it as a teachable moment. Just ask me how to pronounce my name.
It's simple. You decide that other people's feelings and experiences matter.
We need to have more uncomfortable conversations so that we can drive more inclusion. And oftentimes, it's not easy.
And it's important, otherwise change will never happen.
My name is Shomodeep Ganguly, but people call me Sam.
I am Layla Karem. Mutsa Matanga.
Ms. Geneviève Leblanc.
Ashley Pasila.
Patrick Duff.
Neil McLaughlin.
Helena Gotchling.
Rod Bolger.
Jessica Shue.
Kazim Marcano. I'm a chef and I forge metals.
A proud mother.
Forklift operator and a truck driver.
I envision a day when we can just be so accepting of each other, where we can make space for others.
Okay, these clips that I'm showing you are all from Speak Up for Inclusion, so it's a very good site to go and check. And I think it's a really powerful avenue to go down, as you saw in that clip around why we do what we do. In the United States, some of you may be aware, there's quite a big pushback against diversity, but actually isn't. It is more people feeling really uncomfortable and awkward, and rather than embracing it and exploring it, they're shutting it down. Isn't that what we often do with most things in life? When we don't like something, we want to get rid of it. And people in their lives have been very comfortable with a certain way, and now people are going, no, you need to change your way. I'll give you another example around leadership. So let's just take leadership development. So leadership decades ago, which really is hopefully now, was about being right. My way is the highway. I earned this role. I'm in charge. I'm the decision maker, and no one can question me. And I know everything. Well, I have to know everything. And we have evolved, have we not, to this day and age, It's still a work in progress, where the number one key requirement to be an effective leader is empathy. That's number one. So any leadership course that you go on, they will talk about empathy. And why is it so critical? Because empathy is to connect, to relate to another human being. And if we go back to core fundamentals, that's what humility is. And that's where we go wrong, because humility is to realize that I'm not better than or less than another human being. And that's when we go wrong. If we don't have humility, that's why we think we're better, or that's why we think we're less. The psychological term for that is ego inflation. I'm better than you, or ego deflation. I'm less than you. But that is my go-to place, is humility. Think about it. Whenever I need to think about something, do something, respond, something that's important that I'm passionate about, am I being humble? Or am I coming across as a bit arrogant? Or I'm superior, I'm better than you. And how do you know these people? Because they'll tell you. They'll say, do you know who I am? You're lucky to have me in your life. And the key is also not to fall in the trap where you feel less than other people because of their title, their position, their experience, the money that they have. Same story. We are all human. So to get practical, because you're going to ask me, so what do we do? So here's some tips for you. There are many, but these are key ones that we can start, because like anything in life, in order to shift, it's baby steps, one bite at a time, to get people more comfortable and to stop the resistance. Any change, you know that. We resist change because we're comfortable, and I've got to learn something new. So I'm naturally biased because look at that, education and training is one of the fundamental ways in which we can improve people's understanding of intersectionality or diverse groups or being more inclusive. Providing diversity, equity, and inclusion training that covers intersectionality, and also what's very important here. It's not a once-off course or workshop and tick. It's not a tick box exercise, because as with diversity and inclusion, it is inculcated into the culture of your organization and society in general. So it's not a one-hit wonder. This is something you have to embed in your culture and your strategy as an organization. Another really powerful one, which organizations do not tap into enough, okay, is mentorship programs. Okay, mentorships are incredibly powerful. You can have formal, you can have informal ones. And what is a mentorship? It is finding someone in the organization, and they do not have to be in the same role as me or the same level as me. It's another person in the organization that I can be mentored by, that will be able to guide me and support me. Especially helpful when you're dealing with minority or marginalized groups in an organization. Okay, and anybody can be a mentor. If you want to share, you can be a mentor. So it's a powerful thing to encourage in your space, is to identify mentors, to upskill them in what it is to be a mentor, and then to offer it to the business. Okay, these mentors have knowledge, they have experience, they're often at a stage in their career that they want to give back. So really, really powerful. It does not have to cost you anything. Okay, but you can call me, I can help you. Only joking. It does not have to cost you a thing. And so it's an awesome untapped strategy. Inclusive policies. This is what organizations get very uncomfortable about. It's re-looking at all your policies and procedures and rules and regulations. So this is often what we see there. This is where the stumble block happens, because we have a set structure that is not open to shift and change. What did we learn in COVID? We learned, what did COVID taught us? What are the massive benefits of COVID, believe it or not? Besides the tragedy and the loss of people and our world was turned on its head, is that we learned that anything can change overnight. Things we were told could never happen, happened overnight. And those of you who experienced it will know exactly what I'm talking about. And we need to remember that. So every company policy and procedure, rule and regulation can be renewed and refreshed and relooked at. It can be an exercise. Okay. You can bring in subject matter experts from each area of your division, and you can relook at it and you can facilitate the process. And why are you doing that? You're going to have your lens on, your diversity lens and your inclusion lens, to look at examples here are flexible work arrangements, mental health support, looking at neurodiverse, being inclusive when it comes to neurodiversity, team builds. Massively, the huge one is your recruitment policy, how you recruit. Are you using AI? Are some of your practices discriminatory? Are you still talking about, careful about this one, culture fits? Because you should be talking about culture adds in your environments, because you want to add people who are different into your space. You don't want to create and embrace and bring in more zombies that look like you, sound like you, behave like you, think like you. Okay, that's a biggie. If you're uncomfortable with this flexi work environment, then you're going to get left behind. Okay, and we've seen a lot of pushback that's going on around the world. So the first prize is a hybrid space. So hybrid is magic, because hybrid allows you still to have the best of both worlds. Some companies have gone completely online or completely working from home, and others have told everyone must come back. Now, your organization is made up of unique beings. Okay, so some will benefit, some thrive working from home, and some thrive from working in the workspace. So that's why you've got to allow some flexibility here. You've got to allow some hybrid options. Otherwise, when our economy booms, which is coming, you're going to lose people. You know, the generation coming into the workplace now, one of their top questions they ask is about flexibility. And you can say, this generation, hey, they know nothing, and who do they think they are? Well, they're the future. They're not going away. So if you want to attract good talent, best you create some form of flexibility. Okay. And people often ask me, so where must we go? No, it's totally unique to your environment. You need to see some roles can be flexible, some roles can't. But where you can, if you don't want to be left behind, you need to find some form of flexibility. And then the last one is where we start with any form of diversity and inclusion development and training, is to have a conversation. You need to have a damn conversation with people. That's where you start. That's how you get people talking. It is uncomfortable. You don't know where it's going to go. But that, if you want to take this seriously, that's the only way that you're going to make progress and move in any direction. If you start having conversations, ask people, ask your team, ask your employees where they're at, what's in their head, what they're thinking, what they would like. Now, you can't do everything for everybody, but you'll certainly find out what is going on in people's minds. Okay, so surveys are helpful, focus groups are helpful, but make sure if you do a survey and a focus group that you act on it, because you all know there's nothing worse than companies that churn out the culture survey every year and nothing changes. Because guess what? People are going to lose respect and believe that nothing is going to shift, nothing's going to change, and your trust element is gone forevermore. So if you've done that before, catch a wake up, reevaluate, reassess, and keep it simple. Keep it simple. Okay, there's some wonderful online surveys. There's some exclusive ones, expensive ones. You can create your own. ChatGPT is wonderful for things like that. Okay, make them short and sweet. Don't make surveys long, because you will lose engagement. Okay, and then, as I said, do something about it. Do something with that information that you have. Right, so I wanted to leave some time for questions. And I see I never put my camera back. You only saw a big fat eye. Right. So if there are any questions, I think hopefully the chat's been chatting. Any questions, please? And I don't know if Charlene, if people can unmute. I'm happy to take questions as well. Hopefully some seed planting has occurred, and you are planning your first move. So if there are no questions, you're free to go and make the world a better place. Thank you. And to hopefully just implement, think about one thing that I have shared with you today that we can tackle. That's all. One thing. Start somewhere. Just start. Everybody, I will hang around. But the rest of you, if you need to go, we are done and dusted. I will hang around for some questions. If anybody wants to chat to me, if you want to get hold of me, you can get hold of me through Charlene. We'll have my contact details.